the piano salesman come in, and he was playing the piano.
Yeah, and at night when they went to bed, well, they'd had the fire had gone out, and they had the lamp sitting on top of this flat top stove for some reason, I don't know. Probably they'd put the piano someplace where we usually kept our kerosene light. So they set the light on the stove, and it was a glass lamp. And my brother got up in the morning. He was about 12, I imagine, and built fire in the stove. And he went back in there pretty soon, and the coal oil was boiling in that lamp. And he went and grabbed that and ran outside with it, and he just threw it outside, and it didn't blow up on him or anything. But there's some that, I guess when he picked it up, it probably cracked or something, and that kerosene ran down over the stove, and there was a big flash of flame, and he threw something over it and got it, put it out.
My, you could have lost everything.
Yeah, and my dad said, well, you're lucky that didn't burn that piano up. And he said, the salesman says, well, it would have been my loss. So, but no one, if that had burned down, we had no insurance. No one that I knew at that time had any insurance. Whenever the house burned down, it was just burned down.
And I suppose all the neighbors came running to help if something
we didn't
like
have
that.
it. Probably don't. They didn't hear of it for a month.
They did, though. If somebody had a fire while the other
they'd come in and
together,
help. Yes,
and they'd have a barn raising or whatever, you know.
I guess we never did have a fire.
How about sickness? Since you were so isolated, both of you, it must have been a problem if some member of the family got really ill, wasn't it?
Well,
or did you just not get ill?
Themselves, most people did, and of course, once in a while it'd be a serious case that they'd have to maybe haul them out to the doctor someplace. But in those days, the doctor didn't know much more than the parents.
It took hours and a day maybe to get a doctor. We only had a doctor. My mother only had a doctor for one of her 8 children. And then they lived up on that hill. When they were first married, it was her second child. And my father saw that she wasn't getting along good, and he took her home, down to her home. The Rogers family lived there in Beagle. And they got this Dr. Stanley from Sam's Valley. I believe he was in Sam's Valley. I don't believe he was in Gold Hill. They got Dr. Stanley to come out there, and that's the only doctor my mother ever had. And I can't remember of ever having a doctor in my life until I was grown up.
And your brothers and sisters stayed fairly healthy too?
Well, my brother, younger than I am, we had scarlet fever. And you find out so many things when you're growing up and that many kids. And we had this scarlet fever, and it's worse on about 3-year-olds than it is any other age children. It usually goes into their tonsils, and they have swelling in their neck and everything. And my brother got real bad, and they didn't think he was going to make it. And the neighbor, this Dorothy Hannah, that was the doctor's daughter, she came up there, and they put poultices on his neck and everything. But Dad started out to try to get the doctor. She stayed there all night. But my dad went down to the river, and the bridge was washed out, and he couldn't get to the doctor. He was horseback, and they didn't get the doctor, and he got all right. That's the only time we never did have a doctor in our family when we were growing up that came to the house.
Same was true of you too, huh, Fred?
Actually, I think when I was about 10, I got sick. I don't know what the matter with me, and Mother got old Doc Kurtzgessner up there, and he gave me some pills, and I was all right.
And we never one of us had the measles.
I had the measles when I was about 4 years old.
We didn't have 'em, and we all had the measles after we left home, and my father and mother never did have the measles. My grandmother had the measles when she was 80 years old and died with it. People just, when they heard that the measles were around in the valley, they stayed at home. They didn't go out and expose themselves.
That was the hard measles with the high temperature.
Yeah, the regular
Red
red
measles.
measles.
What did Saturday mean to either one of you? Saturday? What did Saturday mean to you?
That was just another day.
Didn't go to
Unless
town?
there was a dance in the neighborhood, then we'd try to go, that was entertainment, we'd go to a dance, and Mom liked to dance much more than I did, and of course she'd like to get there and dance.
All right, well, where'd you hold the dance?
Huh?
Where was the dance held?
Well, there was a dance hall right at Trail, and then they would dance in some people's houses. You know, somebody would have a pretty good sized room where they'd take everything out and dance. Just have some guy that would play a fiddle.
How'd you know there was a dance pending?
So some guy'd come by on horseback and tell us they're gonna have a dance someplace, see?
Well, when I was about, see, I wasn't but about 15, but they had the telephones then. And of course, they were always busy.
Yeah.
But I went, when I was 5 years old, I went to it's the only time I ever saw my father and mother dance. They had danced when they were young, the people around Beagle. And in fact, when they got married, that's their marriage certificate up there. My mother's father, they had the wedding at their house. And they had a dance that night after the wedding. Danced all night until daylight the next morning. And then the first, I was thinking about the one when I was 5 years old. There at on Morgan Hill, they called it. It's right this side of Shady Cove. There was some people named Weaver lived there, and they built a dance hall. And we went up there. There were just, I guess Milt, my brother younger, was. No, maybe they had oars then, I don't know. Anyway, we all went up there, and the kids, I was 5, I'm sure, and I didn't go to sleep, but the people put their kids around on benches to sleep, and mother and father and all of them, they danced all night up there.
Really, home entertainment. How about Sunday? What did Sunday mean to either one of you?
Well, when I was young and going with her, we'd go to church and maybe a Sunday school or something.
And where was this?
Well, we'd go to Trail or to Central School, or then maybe on a Sunday that the neighborhood would have a big picnic down on the river under the trees someplace and hold some Sunday school down there. And baptize some people and all that stuff, you know.
Well, that was, my father and mother were all there. My grandmother Rogers was a Baptist all her life, but, and she didn't believe in dancing or anything, but my grandfather wasn't religious, Rogers that is, and he gambled a lot on Saturday night. They're the ones that had 13 children. But then generally, before they're in about middle age, why the men would get afraid, I guess, and they'd get religion, and then they wouldn't let their daughters go to dances or anything. But anyway, we went to Sunday school if they had somebody. But my parents didn't either one belong to the church until I was 22 years old. And then they belonged, but we always went to camp meetings if they had one or anything. But they didn't profess to be religious.
This has nothing to do with any of their past questions, but I just happened to flip into my mind. When you said you skied, did you make your skis or?
Oh, no, not then. That was after, when I was over at Fort Klamath one year teaching. That's when I learned to ski. There was a family came into Fort Klamath named Zumbrum, And they were from, well, they were from Switzerland, really. The family had come from there, and they were French descent. But they just started skiing in Klamath County, and we bought our skis. And I had borrowed skis at first, people, that had a pair they didn't use, and then I bought my skis. And we skied every Sunday, every Saturday and Sunday. We'd go out to some place, the Looseleys, a family there, had a place out in the foothills, and we'd go out there on Saturday and ski all day, and then play pinochle all night, and then ski on Sunday, and then go back home.
Fred, did you ever learn how to ski? Did you ever learn how to ski?
No, I've skied, but I didn't know how. No, I never did learn how.
Okay, I think I've got just about down there. What did you both want to do when you grew up, when you were little children?
I don't know what I wanted to do, but I wanted something better than my brothers and sisters had ahead of me, or my folks had had. And I'm sure that we have had something better. I think she kind of felt the same way about it. My parents and probably hers too, they had accumulated something, of course, in their lifetime, and they had a good living, but that was about it. And we wanted a little more than that. I did anyway, and I'm sure she did, and believe me, she helped me do it.
Well, I didn't think about the future when I was a kid.
Not when she was a kid, she didn't.
But I just knew when I got to be in my teens, like 12 to 15, that I was going to get away from farm. I didn't like it. And all my brothers and sisters at my age or older, my oldest sister, she didn't want us to be that way, and she did just like I did when we got through the 8th grade, and we couldn't go away to school because my folks didn't think about sending me, and I didn't know how to do anything to earn my way. I just kept on going to school there, and then when I got old enough, when I was 17, I went to summer school and took teacher's examination. So my older sister did too. She was 7 years older, and she went away and started teaching, and that's what I did.
Where did she teach?
She taught the first year. She taught over at Waldo, over toward the coast. I don't know how she knew that they needed a teacher there. Well, all you had to do was come down to Jacksonville, and the county school superintendent would tell you where there were openings. And she taught there, and I guess she taught at Trail.
Taught at Trail. I went to school to her.
And then she got married. And she only lived 2 years after she got married. She had tuberculosis and died. She had one daughter, and she is Doris Nealon.
Nealon. That name really rings a bell.
Yeah, well, Emmett Nealon, he worked for I wanted to tell you that's the only ambition I had, and I just love teaching, and that's the only thing that I've ever liked, only just everything that everybody does.
There's a picture. Her sister's picture.
Okay, I'm going to shut this off because I wanted to talk to you about some of these photographs, so I'm going to shut this off now, and I may start it again.
Some things you'll have a right to put in, there's a bunch of
See, we're right in the middle.
bootleggers. No.
Most of the things I find in the history are just interesting. They're not bad, they're just interesting.
Well, I don't mean half the things I say.
Oh, well, me
See,
either.
Well, I just want to tell you one more thing about that book. I have,
This is
this is a family tree.
of Life and Letters of Christopher Houston.
Yeah, and this is Christopher Houston's tree. And it tells that my father is in here, someplace on.
Somebody went to a lot of work to make that family tree.
Yeah, and our son-in-law thinks we have all the information to take my grandfather, wherever he is, and make a tree with him and have all of us on it. This is called the French curve, and it's the way they make it. Now, I know.
I can't imagine someone going to all that work to do that. That's really...
They did it for money. That's
My.
what everybody does everything for, is money.
Not for love and country, huh?
Well, I want to ask you about that magazine that, Tim, were you recording it?
Yeah, but that's okay. That's fine. You want to shut it off a minute? And I can see if I can get you some back issues. There's some out there, too.
We know so much of it that we read in there, and it's pretty good.
Issues. Oh, and Ray's such a good writer. Okay, how you two sort of grew up together. So when did you decide to start dating?
It was about 1919.
Oh, 18.
Where did we go together in 18?
Well, I was out in Kentucky with Forest Service, and we seen each other once in a while, went to a dance or something.
The first time I remember of us going together, I'd been in Seattle. Went up there during World War I. I went up there in 1918, came back in 19, and we were, all the people had kind of come back from the war, and he didn't have any girlfriend, and I didn't have anybody, and all our friends were going to dances, and we just were thrown together that way, I guess. Now you tell your version of it.
Nothing to say.
No, not going to commit yourself. Did bells go off when you first started?
Yeah.
Right away.
Well, the bells had been ringing for some time before 1919.
When you saw
I
her.
had looked at her a lot of times.
When he was 10 or 12.
But how about you? Did bells go off for you? Or?
No, I'm not very jingly like. I did, to me he was just one of the kids around there for a long time.
I was 6 years young. I'm 6 years younger, of course.
And
She was.
of course, nobody else came along, I guess, We just decided to get married. We wondered whether we should or not, though. I did all the time, and I think he did too.
Mm-hmm.
Even as we were going up to the preacher to get married, I wondered if I wasn't making a mistake, to marry someone that much younger.
Did he seem mature to you at the time, or?
Well, he seemed more as mature as I did. I wasn't. I never have grown up, really. Age doesn't matter to me.
No, my mother's married to someone, after my father died, she married someone, and he must be 10 or 12 years younger than her, and they seem exactly the same age to me. What did you do, Fred, for a living?
I did everything in the world to make a living because I never did have a regular job. You know what I mean? I cleaned sewers and climbed telephone poles and done everything there was. Shoveled gravel.
This is after you were married, or before? Or?
After, and sometimes some of it before, and I even drove cattle, and I've done everything.
So,
made shakes.
What did you finally settle down doing, mostly?
Well, I worked for 13 years for a sawmill company in Prospect. That was the longest, and then when we moved to Medford, we finally got in the real estate business.
And excuse me, Fred.
If I had had nerve enough to move to Medford earlier, we would have been much better off because we did all right in real estate. But you hate to quit when you got a job and you don't have much money. You wonder about changing.
That's true, probably during the Depression in particular. If you
Well, that's it. Our kids were little in the Depression, and some days I'd have 2.5 in my pocket, and some next day no money. But we always had plenty to wear and plenty to eat and good food.
How about you, Eula? You didn't want to be on a farm, so you weren't married to a farmer then?
No, no, when we got married, I was still teaching school. I taught for 2 years after that. And we decided, his mother wanted to sell out up their trail, so we decided to lease that place for 5 years, and we did. And we had a grocery store and
Gas station.
and we had rooms. It was a little overnight place, really. And then we had a child. Our boy was born, and we didn't want to stay there any longer, so we moved up to Prospect, because I had taught school up there, and we liked everybody up there, and we liked that kind of a life. And then we went up there, and the Depression came on, and we just stayed there. I didn't work at teaching then, but wherever we were, if I could get a job, I did, whatever. I did everything up there. And worked, took care of cabins and did everything.
So really, you weren't a stay-at-home
No,
wife.
I
You
never
were out
have
there
been, no.
hustling right along with Fred.
Yeah, I never did want to stay home. I'm not a good homemaker, I guess. I just wanted to get out and where the action was all the time.
And I got to thinking about your skiing the other day, and when you started skiing, they wore long dresses, right?
Oh, no.
What was your skiing costume?
Bloomers.
Yeah, you talk to her something, I'll go and get the picture. I tell everything with a picture.
She wore bloomers.
Bloomers?
Yeah. And, yeah,
What,
long underwear.
what year was this about?
Oh,
Well, a year.
17, I think.
It's 16 and 17.
16 and
I was
17.
trying to figure out trying to
ski.
ski in a long dress, and it didn't seem
No.
practical.
No, you can't ski in a dress.
Oh, I worked for the Forest Service for 2 years, drove fire truck for them. And I put 55,000 rainbow trout in Lake of the Woods, and there were 2 cabins there. Nobody around there in the summertime at all. And then I was working on the road maintenance crew, driving cat, about that time, a little, 19, I guess. And the whole crew go swimming without any clothes on, nobody there. Now you can't even find a place to park your car.
No.
This is a whole new can of worms. That's out at Fort Klamath when I was out there when we skied, and that's kind of, well, those women, they weren't out on trip. They were just had their picture taken there. And I was out there when World War I started, 1917, and all of these pictures are, I was going to show you one.
Well, I don't know anything about the history of Fort Klamath. Did they reactivate that in World War I, or
No.
they just, it's still,
No, there, that's me on ski.
oh, that's a pretty slim costume. It looks like long stockings and
yeah.
bloomers. It sort of came down to
Yeah.
your knee.
Just came just below the knee. And the shirt is a wool shirt, and we had a heavier coat that we wore over that shirt, but we didn't. We were up there and it was below zero all the time.
This was in 1918
It
approximately?
was 1916 or 17.
I didn't know they ever allowed ladies' legs to show in 1916.
Well, that was, I'll tell you, I know when that was. It was 1917, in February of 1917. And the hotel was just the one big building then. And we stayed
At Fort Klamath.
No,
No,
Crater Lake.
At Crater Lake, the hotel was just
Yeah.
one big building?
Yeah. And we stayed about 4 days up there in that hotel. There were 9 of us. See, here's more of the pictures. There we are on our way. Here's Fred Zumbrum. No, this is Chuck Zumbrum, and he's still living, and he's 98 years old. And he's the only one of the crew that went up there, except he and and I are the only ones. Here they are. Some of them walked down to the lake. I didn't.
This Mr. Zumbrum, would it be possible to get an interview from him, do you suppose,
Oh,
sometime?
I doubt it.
I'll tell you, he's in a nursing home in Klamath Falls now.
You can't hear.
And, but I'll tell you, if he might, I'll tell you, they have more history in Klamath County than we do. You can probably get it from over there. I don't know, they keep their history going. The reason I say that, the kids who went to school to me just told me so much history. And that was true, and then they made some moving pictures that I think I had them here in the beginning, and all these, here they are going up to the lake, and all of these men, they're in 1917, there's the people who went to war from Fort Klamath. I had a picture of that, and I knew all of them, and I don't know how many of them still alive. I know that Harold, kept track of him better than any of them. Harold Bunch. B-U-N-C-H, Bunch. And his mother was a Loosley, the old Loosley family at Fort Klamath. And they're all in different, Short, his folks had a farm out there. And this is Cecil Lowe, and the Lowe family were well known in Klamath. His father, I think it could have been his uncle, was sheriff of Klamath County for years. And they went, and there's the Zumbrums that introduced skiing to Fort Klamath.
And we belonged to the Old Timers Club in Fort Klamath, and we went to the meetings there every year until the last 2 years, and something has happened that we just couldn't go. Last 2
We can't
years.
go this time because it's the day after our picnic out here.
The kids will be here.
Well, that's that episode.
Well, there's some interesting things in there. Would you, do they bring back memories you want to share with us in that book? As long as I'm taping it, I might just as well hear about what some of these pictures meant.
Oh, well, let's see. Here's Lindsay Sizemore. He's a man. He's a half brother of the Pelton brothers that were lived between Gold Hill and down by Sam's Valley.
P like Paul.
Pelton, P-E-L-T-O-N, Pelton. And they had a ranch out of Fort Klamath. They had a big ranch here too in this county. And he was one of the people who went to Crater Lake with a bunch. And all of these people here are people who lived around Fort Klamath for years, and that is, maybe I better wait and tell you that later.
How was Crater Lake? It was pretty rough up there too. Not much tourist trade, I don't imagine, in 1917, 1918.
No.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm ashamed to tell you how much I know about everything, but that summer of 1917, they were working on the lodge, and they were building a road around Crater Lake. And I knew everybody around Fort Klamath, and the butcher that went up there every week. Sometimes I'd ride up there with him, and I knew all of those people nearly that were going up the lake then. I was just trying to think of him. He's well known around there. Castile, Tony Castile. C-A-S-T-I-L-E. And he was related to some of the Indians that stayed over there, and he was related to Ed Hoyt. The Hoyts, they were from this county, Ed and George Hoyt. He was their nephew too, related to them. And
where did this butcher come from? Did he have a butcher shop?
His uncle, George Hoyt, had a butcher shop in Fort Klamath, and he delivered meat all around there. The Klamath County have the best beef. That they've ever had in Southern Oregon. they have always been supposed to have. And he delivered meat up there to the crews, you know. And sometimes we'd eat up there at the camp where they were feeding the men, you know, and they'd just take those great big horses of beef. And then he delivered meat down at, what is the west side of the lake? Rocky Point. They had a camp there, and I used to go over there. And there's just so many things to say about all that. But the roads, you just can't imagine what the roads were like over there. It was in that, the fallout from that volcano was still affecting the roads. And they had, it was 1917, so you can see the car was 1917 Ford. And they didn't have gear shifts or anything. And it was a terrible mess. But everybody liked to go places, and we'd ride wherever anybody was going. And that dust was about 18 inches deep, they said, in some places.
Volcanic dust.
Yeah.
Now this was, what year did you and Fred get married in anyway?
1921. Friday, May the 13th.
Well, I'm going to come back to this, but I guess I better get you married before we go any further.
Before we have any kids.
Before you have any children, right. So you got married, and where did you move to?
Prospect.
Right away after?
Yeah, we moved right up there. I was going to teach up there the next year, and Fred, he had a job there. You tell him about it.
Well, I had a sprinkling job driving a sprinkling truck on 6 miles of plumbing from Prospect to Cascade Gorge.